Driving while black is one of the greatest drivers, one of the biggest reasons for violent interactions and excessive force encounters between law enforcement and black people. It's one of the single biggest drivers that is the cause of excessive force being used on black people, driving while black. First, let's talk about what driving while black is. I assume you know what it is. Most people have heard about it, but just to be sure that we're on the same page here, to ensure that everyone knows what we're talking about, I'm just going to define it for you so that we have the same working knowledge as I move forward to talk about this really important issue. So, driving while black, what does it mean? Well, essentially what it means is that blackness by itself, blackness in and of itself is a crime. To be black is a crime, right? Police officers use the fact that you are black as a reason to stop you, and then they come up with a lawful reason for the stop later. The initial reason was black. I pulled you over because you were black in a certain area, and I presumed that you had involvement in criminal activity, because to be black in America sometimes means, not sometimes, most times actually, means that there's a presumption of dangers that is put upon you. They presume that you're dangerous because you're black. And I pulled you over. I'm going to find the lawful justification later to get to what I really want to do, which is to search your car, to figure out if you have a warrant. That's why police officers ask questions like, is there anything in the car I need to know about? Where you going? Where you coming from? Why are you so upset? If you have nothing to hide, then let me just search the car. I'll tell you what, why don't you let me search the car? I can just get you on your way. You know, is there anything in your trunk or anything in your car I need to know about? Any weapons in the car? Anything like that, right? If you are pulled over for a minor traffic violation, why are they asking all these questions? Well, because they want to get to what they really pulled you over for, is because they believe that you are involved in criminal activity, and they want to find out. Do you have a warrant? Did you miss court for anything? Is there any reason I can use to arrest you right now? My real reason for pulling you over was that you were black, but I'm going to then go in through these other measures to find out, do I have a reason to arrest you? Driving while black, right? And most black people that I know have these experiences. I have an experience like this. Every black person I know has an experience of driving while black, being stopped for no other reason than you're black, being stopped for no other reason that you were driving in your neighborhood or another neighborhood, and the police stopped you for a minor traffic violation, but the real reason was that you were black. That was a pretextual reason for your stop, blackness, right? In Illinois, where I am, black drivers make up 30% of all traffic stops. That's almost double what it was in the year 2000. And actually, there's an interesting story behind this, which is that in 2004, then State Senator Obama helped pass a law that required police departments in Illinois to track who they're stopping. And in 2004, black drivers were actually not 30% of all stops. They were about maybe almost 15, 16%. It's almost doubled since 2004. So since President Obama, when he was a state senator then, passed that law, black drivers have actually been stopped more. And actually, in Chicago, it's worse. Black people are stopped, listen to this, because this is important. Black people are stopped more than 4 times that of white drivers. This is despite the fact that in Chicago, the black, the white, and Hispanic population are practically equal. They make up the same percentage, about a third and a third and a third. Yet black people are stopped 4 times that of white drivers and twice that of Hispanic drivers. As I said, it's these minor, low-level traffic stops that are driving violent encounters, that are driving excessive force encounters between black people and police officers. You don't believe me? Let me give you some examples. In 2015, Michael Scott was stopped in South Carolina for a minor traffic violation. He had a broken tail light. That was the reason for the stop. You know how the stop ended? With Mr. Scott running away as police officer Slagger fired at him as he drove away. And then the police officer decided to plant something near his body to try to make it appear that Michael had a weapon. He didn't. The police officer took his life during an excessive force encounter that began with driving while black for a broken tail light. Sandra Bland, you remember her? She was stopped for a minor traffic violation. And when she complained, the officer threatened to tase her because he didn't like her attitude, pulled her out of the car, and she was arrested, and she ended up losing her life in police custody. It started because of a driving while black minor traffic violation. Breon King was an elementary school teacher in Austin, Texas. Minor traffic violation. You know what happened to her? Police officer pulled her out of the car, threw her around like a rag doll, like she was a violent criminal. Started because of a driving while black minor traffic violation. And then on top of that, the police officer told her that he treated her the way he did because he believed that black people were violent and had violent tendencies. Driving while black led to excessive force being used on her. Philando Castile, remember him? He lost his life. He was a lawful gun owner. Traffic violation, was pulled over, told the officer, I'm a lawful gun owner. And you know what happened? The police officer fired at him as he sat in his vehicle. He had done nothing wrong at all. I can keep going on. There's so many instances of this happening, of driving while black, leading to excessive force encounters between law enforcement and black people. And in many instances, black people losing their life because of these small, minor traffic violations. And here's the thing about that. The Supreme Court has said this is okay. The Supreme Court has said it's lawful to racially profile somebody as long as the police have a reason to justify the stop. Meaning that it doesn't matter that the police officer, his or her initial reason for stopping the person was that they were black. As long as they can come up with a reason, a traffic violation, then it's okay. The Supreme Court said this in a 1996 case called Wren versus the United States. The case involved police officers who wanted to stop two young black men who were in a vehicle. They had no reason to actually stop them. They hadn't committed any crimes. They just believed that they were black and they were involved in criminal activity. They hadn't done anything wrong. There were no 911 calls. There was no tip about somebody being involved in some sort of robbery or anything. They weren't looking for them. They had done nothing wrong. They just wanted to stop them because they believed they were involved in criminal activity. And the reason they came up with for stopping them, what was the minor traffic violation they came up with, was that they waited too late at a stop sign and then made a turn without signaling. That was a reason. They found their reason. The Supreme Court said that this was okay. They said that pretextual stops are okay. That's what racial profiling is. It says that pretextual stops, meaning that even if an officer had a pretextual reason for initiating the traffic stop, it's okay. As long as the police can have a reason to justify the stop. They said that an officer's subjective intent does not matter, meaning the real reason behind the stop is irrelevant. It does not matter. We cannot take it into account. Doesn't matter if the person didn't like black people. Doesn't matter if he has seen them before and he just didn't like the way he looked. It does not matter. Subjective intent does not matter. All that matters is that the police can come up with a lawful reason to stop the person. If they can do that, the stop will be seen as lawful, and the seizure, because that's what a traffic stop is, the seizure will be seen as a reasonable constitutional seizure under the Fourth Amendment, right? That's all it means. And there are so many ways that police officers can use to justify a traffic stop. There's so many traffic laws. I mean, there are thousands of traffic laws. Here are just some of the ones that are used quite often. Failing to track between lanes. Failing to stop at the correct distance from a crosswalk. Failing to pause the right amount of time at a stop sign. Having an air freshener hanging from your rearview mirror. Did you know that? You can get pulled over and arrested too for having an air freshener hanging from your rearview mirror. You can be arrested for minor traffic violations. The Supreme Court said this in a case called Atwater. They said that even if it was a minor traffic violation, for which normally they don't arrest, even if it was a misdemeanor, the police can still arrest you. Having a cracked windshield, that's a reason. This is one of my favorites. This is one that the Chicago police use a lot, which is failing to have a license plate light. That's a reason that the CPD uses all the time to stop black people in black neighborhoods. Failing to have a license plate light. What does that mean? It means you have to have a light above your license plate to illuminate your license plate. And if you don't, you can be pulled over and arrested if they choose to. I've seen so many of these kinds of stops that CPD has done, these license plate light stops, that have led to people being falsely arrested, people being maliciously prosecuted, and excessive force being used on people because they had this pretextual reason to stop them because they believed that they were involved in criminal activity. And the reason they used to stop them, to justify the stop, was that they failed to have a license plate light. Happens all the time. And it's not just traffic stops. I should mention that. It's street stops as well, right? Meaning that driving while black, that's something too, but there's also something just called existing while black, walking while black, standing while black. If you recall Eric Gardner, he lost his life after a police officer choked him to death because there was a law enforcement encounter that initiated because Eric Gardner was selling loose cigarettes on the New York street. He lost his life because he was existing in a public space while being black. The legal justification for the stop was that he was selling loose cigarettes. It wasn't that somebody had called about him, that he was threatening somebody, that he was bothering somebody. He was a nice man. He wasn't doing anything to anyone. They stopped him because they had a lawful justification that the Supreme Court says you can have, and they stopped him, and it led to him losing his life. He was existing while black on a public street, and it ended up with him losing his life. Just like with traffic violations. There are so many other kinds of offenses that the police can use to stop black people. Once again, here's some of my favorites. Jaywalking, spitting in public places, sleeping in public, sitting or lying down in a public place, removing a trash bin, drinking in public. Years ago, I was actually involved in a case where the Chicago police fired at a black man after they chased him for walking down the street with an open beer can. I remember he was in a white neighborhood. He was walking down the street, hadn't bothered anybody. There was no calls of him being involved in any criminal activity. He was literally just walking down the street, drinking a can of beer, and the police chased him. And he ran. He didn't want to be harassed. He ran. And they chased him into a building. And I remember when he eventually made his way out of the building, he startled one of the police officers, who then fired at him. Didn't have a weapon. He was unarmed. He had done nothing wrong. The police officer fired at him because he was startled when he ran back out of the building. Turns out that man was a veteran who suffered from mental health issues. He committed no crime other than a small minor municipal offense. He was walking and existing while black, and it led to excessive force being used on him. Luckily for him, he did not lose his life. So you can be harmed because you're driving while black, and also just simply existing while black, walking while black, like Eric Gardner or that gentleman I just told you about. And then being black can not only subject you to physical harm, it can also subject you to emotional harm, emotional pain, emotional trauma. Let me ask you this. What's it like to be harassed in your neighborhood? What does it feel like to know every time you walk out of your home that you are subjected to being stopped, harassed, frisked? What does it do to a person knowing that every time they get in their vehicle, that they are more likely to be stopped? If you're a black man between the ages of 19 and 29, you're likely stopped on average about 4 or 5 times a year. What is it like knowing that you've done nothing wrong and you've seen other individuals like yourself who are constantly stopped and frisked? Stop and frisk is a practice that is mainly used in black communities, right? What does that do to a person? What does that do to a community? And here's the interesting part actually about that. For black people, there's actually no respite, right? What do I mean by that? I mean that black people are subjected to these unlawful, well, they're actually lawful because the Supreme Court says they're lawful, but these dehumanizing encounters where the police stop you, frisk you, harass you, they pull you over because you're black, they stop you because you're black. We are subjected to these in our own neighborhoods, right? In a black neighborhood, because we're existing while black, we're driving while black, right? They stop us because we're black in our neighborhoods and they want to see if we have anything, any criminality, any weapons, any narcotics. But also, black people are subject to this kind of policing in other neighborhoods. You're in a white neighborhood, might be stopped. How many times have we seen that? So there's actually no reprieve. There's no respite. There's no safety. There's no safety in your own community. And there's no safety when you leave your community. You are subjected to this type of dehumanizing policing, both where you live and where you don't live. You never get a break from injustice. It's always following you. What does that do to a person? What does that do to a community? What does that do generation after generation, where black men and women and boys and girls are constantly being subjected to this type of dehumanizing policing? So, like I said before, driving while black can lead to excessive force, and also existing while black can lead to excessive force. Hope you enjoyed this. It's just one of many videos we're going to be doing, kind of talking a little bit more about some of these issues that are affecting communities of color when it comes to law enforcement and law enforcement encounters. So stay tuned for more of these coming out.